This was the scariest case of possession I've ever witnessed in my entire life. And it wasn't even in the US. It was right here in South Africa. In 2013, there was a girl named Clara Germana Cele from Newcastle, a city about an hour outside of Durban. She worked at a local supermarket as a checker, and her family described her as a happy and outgoing girl who loved working with children. But recently, she had started to act strange. For example, she would call her mother crying in the middle of the night, saying that she was being chased by a man trying to kill her. However, when her mom would ask her what happened, she would respond by saying, "I don't know," before hanging up the phone. The next morning, she would act like nothing had happened and tell her mom that she must have dreamed it. In addition to these late-night phone calls, she also began experiencing strange symptoms like convulsions, headaches, nausea, difficulty speaking, and hearing loss. One day, she came home from work and told her mom that she felt like her legs were made of lead. Her mom then took her to the doctor, but he couldn't find anything wrong with her. Over the next few weeks, Clara's condition worsened. At one point, she even tried to jump out of a moving car because she thought that someone was trying to pull her inside. When her mom asked her if she needed help, she responded by saying, "You are not my mom. You don't know me." These strange episodes kept happening over and over again, and nobody could figure out what was going on. So Clara's mom took her to a traditional healer, but he too was unable to diagnose her. He just told her that she had been cursed. Then one day, while Clara was getting ready for work, she suddenly ran into the kitchen and grabbed a knife, which she then used to cut off all of her hair. Afterwards, she told her mom that she heard a voice telling her to do it. That's when her family knew that something really was wrong. They then took her to a different traditional healer, who, after looking at her, said that she was possessed by a demon. He claimed that the demon entered her body through an old wound she had on her leg, which she had neglected. According to him, the demon was now causing her to commit evil, and in order to save her, they would have to perform an exorcism. Despite being terrified, Clara's family agreed to the procedure, and during the ritual, the healer began to yell at the demon inside of her, telling it to leave her body immediately. In response, the demon started to fight back, causing Clara to convulse violently. But as the procedure continued, the demon's voice became weaker and weaker until finally it stopped resisting. Afterwards, Clara woke up and everything seemed to be normal. She didn't seem to have any wounds or injuries, but since the healer didn't want to take any chances, he recommended that she stay at his house for a week so that he could monitor her. He even brought in cameras to record her every move. However, on the second night, something strange happened. While watching the monitors, the healer noticed that Clara had gotten out of bed and was acting erratically. Then as he walked closer to her, she suddenly turned around and lunged at him. Although he was able to dodge her attack, she managed to scratch up his face before he pushed her away. Obviously, he was terrified and quickly called over some other religious leaders who had helped him perform the exorcism. Together, they carried her back to bed and attempted to bless her. But this only seemed to enrage her further. She then began to thrash around, growling and foaming at the mouth. At this point, they were all scared that she might hurt herself, so they decided to tie her down. But as they were doing this, one of the religious leaders noticed that her eyes had turned completely white. This meant that the demon had returned and was now trying to gain full control of her body. Once they finished tying her down, she started screaming at the top of her lungs, which is when one of the religious leaders began to read her rights. As he did this, her eyes rolled back and she went limp. Then, after a few seconds, she suddenly sat up and looked directly at the religious leader who had been reading her rights. She then began to speak in a demonic voice and said, "Do you think you can stop me? You will die, you and everyone you love." After saying this, she began to levitate, which is when the group realized that they were in grave danger. So they quickly untied her and backed away. But no matter how far away they tried to get, she continued to rise higher and higher until she was floating several feet above the ground. The most terrifying part was that she didn't seem to be making any effort to escape. In fact, she actually enjoyed what was happening to her. At this point, they knew that she was beyond help and that their only option was to run for their lives. As they were escaping, they heard a loud crash and turned around to see that the roof had caved in, revealing a gigantic pentagram that had been burned into the wood. Somehow, the demon had known exactly where Clara was and destroyed the building to let everyone know that she was its vessel. To make things worse, people from the nearby community started to show up, and when they saw what had happened, they assumed that it was the work of Satanists. This caused rumors to spread throughout the town, claiming that Clara had been involved in a cult, and that's why the demon chose her as its vessel. Nobody knew what to believe, but one thing was certain: Clara was gone forever. Her family never found her body, and they still don't know what happened to her. Some believe that the demon simply took her to hell with it, while others say that she is still trapped somewhere between heaven and earth, forced to wander for eternity. Whatever the truth may be, the story serves as a warning to those who dare to mess with things they don't understand. Now, this case is one of the most mysterious paranormal cases I've ever come across. It seems like a classic case of demonic possession, yet there is no evidence that any kind of ritual or dark activity was taking place. It's possible that the demon somehow entered her body on its own, maybe due to the open wound on her leg as the healers claimed. Or perhaps it was simply a coincidence, and the demon chose her for whatever reason. Unfortunately, we may never know the truth behind this haunting case. Thanks for watching. What do you think really happened to Clara? Let me know in the comments below. And if you're interested in more scary stories, stay tuned for more content.